Good afternoon, everyone. This is Taller Boricua's exhibition, FEMME Nation. My name is Marcos Dimas. I'm the executive director, and I want to welcome you all to this artist talk, which we're going to have here today. I want to pass the mic over to Nitza Tufino, who coordinated the exhibition, and she will introduce the participants.
Thank you, Marcos. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. This is a wonderful exhibit of female photographers with a new vision about women and their womanhood. And I want to thank Stephenberg, who is the curator, for bringing this wonderful artist to Taller Boricua. This is the first time that Stephenberg does a curating with us at Taller, and I hope it will not be the last or the first, that we should continue working. And I want to thank you, girls, for your wonderful work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nixa and Dimas, and of course the Taller Boricua for being here for us at this time. But I know that you've been here for a long time, providing that positive service in decentralized the cultural resource, and I think that's very valuable. I was lucky, like I say, when we did the opening, of collaborate with three talented artists. When the artist is very talented, it's a very easy curatorial job. And especially as women, photography is so interesting that from the very beginning, in the 1840s, women participate in the initiative of photography. That it was from Europe and all the way in the United States. This was, you have the Abbott and several important women that they did early photography work. In this case, these are Latino women. And the same concerns are there, and it's a difference, of course, between women's and men's, and in the work of art that come out, especially in the way that define body. The body for women is a very, very important subject, and is present in the work of mostly any important photographer female. I would like to just start with Maria, and then with Lizzy and Sandra, to start with that part. You know, the body as the subject of your work, and the concerns that come through you when you are using the camera and as an expression tool. Okay?
Hi. Can you guys hear me? So most of my work deals with how women are perceived in society, specifically in the media, specifically in magazines that we see all the time as we pass by on our commute, you know, the newsstands, social media. So a lot of my inspiration for this specific series comes from the way that women are perceived, and body language, the way that they're expected to look in front of a camera. And these are things that I play with in my work. Okay. Okay.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me? So I'm Lizzy Alejandro. My work is the Vejigante series. And in response to what Louis said, a lot of my work, pretty much primarily all my work, has to do with issues of the female body. I grew up in a very restrictive and religious home, in a Jehovah's Witness home. And so from a very young age, I was taught and I was told to constantly cover the body and conceal the body. And my body was not mine. Jehovah didn't like this. Jehovah didn't like that. This was against Jehovah. So I grew up with those connotations, and naturally I rebelled against it. So a lot of my work has to do with societal, cultural, but also religious connotations that were put on me from a very young age. So for me, my work uses the human body, particularly the female form, as a form of empowerment.
Hi, my name is Sandra Ayala, and the way that I use my work is the majority of these are self-portraits, with the exception of the one with my son by himself, and maybe this one here, her final goodbye. When I started in photography, I started using myself as the subject because I couldn't find people to photograph, and my son was too young at the time. So I used myself, and I found that I can control how I looked, how I perceived myself, and what I can put myself into. So as my work progressed, I started throwing concepts and ideas into the stories that I would create with photos. This particular one is titled Take Me to Church. So all these are part of a series, and they do have religious connotations, but the actual religious aspect is not the most important for me, but the issues that surround religion. So they're very personal, and I used myself for the most part because I felt a certain and a personal connection to the reason why I created each and every one of them. So that's how I related into the FEMME Nation kind of idea of this show.
Yeah, it's a other aspect that also being in photography and through these days we carry on, that is the duality, this dual relationship between the photography committed to the fine arts or to the creative intention, and then the photography that it focus more in the journalist and documentation of a particular event. And in these days, I can find that happening also in a photography that it document a particular situation, but also is committed to the creative process. Now, in the three artists here, I see a serious commitment to the creative process more than a documentation or a documentary. But I know that other work that they did in different moments, it focused in the documentary part of the journalist part. Now, each of you, I don't know if they are aware of that part or it becomes some, maybe in a way, in a natural way. So, did you consider it, use photography in the documentary aspect and not in the creative way, or it works together?
I think it works together. I mean, personally for myself, photography is a documentation of light and shadows. So it does have that in some kind of aspect, but there has to be a creative part to it, I think. Photography is a very interesting medium. That's my take on it.
For me personally, I focus more on the creativity. For me, I look at it this way. Yes, I'm a photographer. I use the camera, it's my tool to create. But ultimately, I feel I'm more an artist. I don't feel like I take a picture, I create a picture, I make a picture. For me, it's creating narratives or stories based on events and things that have happened in my life. So the documentary aspect of it, I just kind of neglect it for me. I focus more on just the creative aspect of photography, if that makes sense.
For me, I think that I do use it to maybe speak to a certain issue that's happening at a certain time. So I can use it to state how I'm feeling at that moment about something that maybe happened on the news, but it's done creatively always. I always create this story with my photos, and although the story is not seen or known right away to the viewer, for myself, I know there definitely is a story. So, for example, the piece at the back was created over something that happened one day on the news that I was just so taken with. And so I created a creative piece about that thing that happened. Yes, I was to myself documenting that issue, and I was purging what I was feeling about that situation. But I always, when I do it creatively. There has to be a story. It has to be, for me, it has to be pretty or maybe not so pretty, but it has to tell a story, and it has to be different. It can't be like the same. Like documentary for me is just so blah. Where somebody else loves it, for me personally, I don't, I try to give it a twist all the time. So yeah, I don't want to be stuck in that box. And that's the reason why.
Yeah, if Michael from documentary center, he may have a heart attack if he hear that statement.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely is interesting, and the other part is this is also three creative women that also work in other kind of duty that is not the full-time artistic duty, because it's a difference also between the people who make living doing their artwork and the people who do their artwork plus they have to make a living, and in this case also they have to be so the ones that have kids need to be also the mother role or the mother responsibility that also is there, and still have time to work with this communicative outlet and express yourself. But also you express yourself in very concerned manners in terms of social commitment and themes that have something to do with empower your social condition in a gender perspective, right? So, in the other hand, you have other people that can do photography just for the aesthetic and do pretty things and sell them. But you choose to deal with subjects that they need to be addressed outside of be able to market that word. But how you see that part, the possibility of market your work and the possibility of keep doing your work no matter you can market.
Does anybody else want to go first?
I'll take that. I'll take that. Everyone wants to sell their work. I mean, that's obvious. You want to sell your work. For me personally, when I started creating, I could carry either way because I used it as an outlet to let go of what I was feeling. So my work was very emotional, and so if I felt this kind of way today and I needed to create something to kind of purge that, I would do so. So for me, the intention initially was not to market my work and to create this big brand. It was just to kind of soothe myself over things that would have been happening at whatever given time in my life. Because I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a registered nurse, I have a home, I have a dog, I have parents who live with me. Like, I have all these things, and so I needed to create for that reason. So for me, initially, the marketing and the selling was not important. Now, I would not be averse of somebody wanting to buy it. Obviously, that's not, but for me, my intention personally is not to say, oh, look, I'm gonna make all this money on my work. Again, I wouldn't be averse to it, but it's not the intention, and that's just, personal for me.
Can I? I'm just gonna touch off what Sandra said. So for me, it's the same thing. I mean, if somebody has interest in buying my work, I'm not gonna be opposed to it, but I do not create for that. And I feel, especially with what's going on in the world with issues with women's bodies and, femicides going on in South America. You have, issues going on with women in Middle East. And here in the United States, we have Congress that's telling us, dictating what women can and cannot do with their body. So for me, it's really pushing that artwork that addresses those issues. I honestly couldn't care less if I would sell. If I can, I'm not going to be opposed to it, but it's really responding to that, to those issues that are very important. I'm a woman, and we all dealt with that at some point and still do. There's a lot of women that still face those issues. So I think for me, it's super important to respond to that and create work that addresses those issues.
I'm just gonna keep this really short. I'm a mother as well. I have been making art my whole life. Art for me is a form of therapy. And I have tried photography, like weddings and events and all that stuff. And it's been a great experience, but it takes a lot away from me when I know that I'm behind the camera and there's like a paycheck attached to it. It just doesn't feel the same. So that's why I'm still making art creatively, to express myself and to also touch upon the things that are going on today in our world.
I think that we has expressed ourselves in relationship of this exhibition in particularly, right? But I would like to hear more from the people present, and by that guidance, we may learn new things, and we will be more comfortable to understand if the exhibition itself accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish. So maybe Nixa.
Well, the first, I was going to ask you for each one of you to introduce yourself. Say a little bit like a small biography, where
Okay.
you were born. Something about yourselves, and how long you've been in the city and not in the city, so we know a little bit more about your, who you are, your children, whatever, and then we can pick up on the other one.
Okay, you can start.
Well, I was born and raised in the South Bronx. My parents are from Puerto Rico. I was raised by my grandmother because my mom was a working woman. And so I didn't find art or discover art really until I was in my mid-30s, and picked up my first DSLR camera that was a gift from my wonderful husband. And so I needed a decompression tool because I was working as a home care nurse and it was very stressful. So I needed something, an outlet. And so I asked him for that camera as a gift, as a joke. And on Christmas, he had the camera for me. So that was 2008. And I haven't stopped since. I decided I'm going to teach myself this camera. So I'm self-taught. I taught myself the camera. I've had 3 and 4 cameras since then. I taught myself Photoshop because I can't paint to save my life, and I really wanted to paint. So I decided I will make my photography look more painterly. They look more like paintings, and that's the reason why they look that way, actually. But yeah, so I picked up the camera. I taught myself Photoshop, and then I used myself early on in self-portraiture to develop my style. And subsequently, my son got older. He's 13 now, and he's been my muse. He is all over my work. Not obviously not in this particular show, only in those 3 pieces, but in general, he is a huge part of my creative process. And yeah, so that's basically a quick synopsis of who I am.
I was born and raised in the Bronx from Allerton. I still reside in the Bronx. Second generation. My parents were born here as well. My family's from Puerto Rico. And since I was probably 5, I've always had a disposable camera. And I've always loved art. I was always drawing. I wanted to be so many things. I wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to be like a comic book artist. I was heavy into that. I wanted to do so many things. But when I really fell in love with photography, I was 16. And I started taking free classes at The Point, which is still around. And I'm forever grateful for it, because if it didn't exist, I don't know where I'd be. And as I, enrolled into Lehman College, I just really got into photography. I was always in the darkroom. And this is where I met Maria. We were always in that darkroom. And yeah, I still wish I had a darkroom. I had to step away from it ever since I graduated, but so that's like my history with photography, pretty much.
Hi. I don't know how to start. I don't know where to start. But born and raised in the Heights. I've lived in every single borough except Staten Island. I have always been surrounded by art, whether through postcards or books in the house. I have my father to thank for that. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. I currently live in the Bronx. I'm raising 2 kids. I became a mother at a very young age, and art was my outlet. Art was the only thing that I had for myself. And even then, it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the kitchen trying to make something, and my kids would wake up and they'd get involved in whatever it is that I was doing. So the first part of my artistic career, I guess, with photography, most of it is, themes of motherhood and children and family and portraiture. And then I kind of moved away from that, started doing events and documentation, like working for newspapers. And like I said before, I lost that passion or that drive with photography. I also draw, I also paint. I have a lack of focus, as you can tell, just by listening to me speak. I like to get involved in a lot of things, but I find myself now coming back to photography in the darkroom, photography as a fine art, something physical, something that's not something that you're always constantly scrolling down on Instagram or on Facebook, something that you can actually make and hold with your hands.
Yeah, I grew up in Puerto Rico in the west side of the island, in a countryside. It gave me the opportunity to experience the last stage of the agrarian life, something that was already disappearing. So I was able to experience that with like my grandfather and my grandparents. My parents, they was aware of the arts. My mother and my father's both of one. My mother theater, poetry. My father liked painting and modern art. So in some way I was lucky of see the world with the art experience, where art experience was present. Now, I decided to be in the arts, in theater, and then later on in visual arts, study in Instituto de Cultura Puertorriqueña Visual Art School, and later in Mexico, in San Miguel Allende. I came to New York several times in my life, but I came to stay in the early 80s. But my experience in the art always has something to do with collectivity. the collective energy that become alive when a group of artists get together to do an exhibit, for example. And I decided to get myself into the conceptual art in some kind of Puerto Rican way. I work with the Movimiento Sintesista Actualizado in the 70s with a group of artists in Puerto Rico, and later in New York we tried to do that. But collectivity is for me the truly energy that defines the concept of art as a tool of communication and as a synthesis of the semiotic energy that has the society together in the truly understanding. When I came to New York and moved to the Bronx, I find collective groups like Bronx Art Space, for example, and you can see the result here because both Lizzy and Maria work in Bronx Art Space. And also she mentioned the point. It was very interesting when she mentioned the point because the point is being around the Hunt Point for many years. And it's so interesting where the results come alive and tell you, hey, I learned photography in the point. So what that keep telling me is as well exhibitions in community spaces that it works, that our new generations need that outlet next to their own environment. The museums are very important, but Taller Boricua also is very important because it defines in the neighborhood that art is for everybody and arts can have a positive result in the life of everybody. So learning from that experience, I think that my life is committed to the arts because it's a way of life, it's a way of live your life. The artist, as different the other professions, doesn't divide itself between me, Mr. X, and me in my home. Artist is the artist 24 hours. So it's a way of live your life, and it's a way of participate in the society as a productive worker for the positive living of the same neighborhood where you are. So you don't need to be in important museums as long you do local work that have something to do with the arts. So being getting myself into the curatorial part of the arts provide opportunity to share with different people and also to learn from their creative process. So
I just want to touch on that about the accessibility of art in our communities, and that's super important. Yes, museums are important as well, and galleries and all, but I mean, let's face it, some of them charge, some of them are like not within our reach. So I think having El Taller Boricua and having the point especially, like it made it accessible to me to take free photography classes. Because I remember prior to that, I had asked my parents, I wanted to get into something. And my parents, they were looking for classes and they were like, we can't afford this. They were super expensive. So when I found the point, it changed my life. And that's like, as a child, so important and crucial to have in a community is having the accessibility to art.
anybody who want to share their experience, I don't know. Yes? Good.
Good afternoon. in that point of value and impact, you guys present you have, some of you, I don't know what you do, but you mentioned that you're a nurse, and sometimes, the economic transaction of somebody buying your work is not a driving force or a validating point. So, which is very interesting, because then, especially these kind of spaces that provide access to, different, wider audience and a more diverse audience. So what do you see, how do you catalog the value of your work besides your personal intent? But, once it's framed and once it's in the gallery, it's get consumed. Not necessarily by me buying it, but so where is that value of me seeing your work and exposing your work to these audiences? And then, where do we place that cultural value? And at the community level and at the societal level, because you guys are presenting here a work that is very important to the defining fabric of American society. So,
For myself, well, and that's what I mentioned earlier. I think pertains a lot to that, is the creating of stories and the reason why these pieces are created. What I love about my work is that, well, art in general obviously is subjective, right? Everyone has their own opinion about what they see. So when I create my work, I try to make it as impactful as I can, so that the viewer, when they look at it, they are creating their own story. However, that one photograph has this awesome story that's in my head, playing in the background as it's being viewed by someone. I think it's important because mostly when I stand in front of someone and talk about what that means and what that means and what that means, then I'm telling the story from my point of view. Sometimes I don't like that, because I don't like to take away what the viewer thinks is happening in that story. For example, in those three pieces over there, they all have a religious undertone, but in those three pieces in general, oh my God, there's like 20,000 things occurring at once. And you wouldn't know it unless I sat here with you and have had that conversation with you. I think it's important to create it and make it impactful, because whoever comes in and views it has that story, and making myself accessible, they can ask me, hey, what does that mean? Having it in a space like this is so amazing, because it gives us that opportunity. Whereas if it's in my attic where I normally keep them, the story would not be. So one of the important things that I do, and I think Lizzy does, and Maria as well, we try to show our work as much as we possibly can. So my work has shown a lot, thanks in part to Louis, and spaces like this, because we want to tell those stories. We want to create that narrative and that conversation. But what I find is that very often there's not many places for us to have that dialogue and that conversation. And so it's so funny, because Lizzy and I and another partner of ours created something called the Bronx Women's Photo Collective. And it's an organization that we ourselves created because we found that there's not enough spaces like that to have those conversations and to tell our stories and our narratives with our work. So yeah, I think it's important to sell. It's also important to be able to show a face and say, hey, yeah, that's created because of this, because of the way that I felt about religion or whatever. So yeah, I don't know if that made sense, but that's how I got it.
Can I jump in really quick? To answer your question, how do we measure value with our work? So I don't think it's just a monetary value. I think for me, it's being able to exhibit in places like this and engage the community and have these dialogues and these conversations about what's going on. Taller Boricua exhibits work primarily of Latinas, Latinos, the Hispanic population. So I think for me, the value, it's in that. You know, we had a very successful opening. We got to meet a lot of people. And for me, that's where the value comes in, is when I'm able, or when we're all able to push out our work. Necessarily, I mean, like I said, I couldn't care less if my work sold for $500, $1,000, whatever the price is. I think for me, what makes it valuable is just putting it out there for my community and pushing women, pushing women artists. It's about, like we said, about showing up, constantly being present, whether it's social media or here. Like, we have to push more than ever, especially with what's going on with this presidency. We really need to push. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, no, and I want to just clarify that's what I'm asking is, where are these other values and how those values are more valuable than cash, right? Now, I'm with you, we all need cash to survive and make it, and there are artists that don't have jobs and they need to sell. But there is these other valuable that are value to you and value to us as a community that you guys are doing.
And also, it's important to impact young, like for me, I wish there were someone when I was, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, telling me, hey, you can create something. Hey, you can have an outlet and you can make a statement, whatever that statement may be, but there was nobody for me. And so I think that's what drives us. I think it drives me personally to kind of continue creating and just sharing, share it and create and talk and share and, and that's just the idea of, of my art anyway. But just having that young girl come in and look at my work and say, wow, how did you do this? And for me to be able to explain to her, this is how I did it and this is what you can do. That's enough, for me. It's such a great feeling, and I've had that happen many, many times. So yeah, I could die happy.
This is very interesting, the time and the space, and as a person that works with idea art or concepts of art, is, I never believed that I will make living with art. I know that I live for the art, but I never thought about I will make living. I did learn things that I use in my life to make living, but I think that was my conception of what art should be. So I work around what we are here, and I think that in that way I've been successful of be part of a wonderful community that define itself into that. And a lot of you are part of that, Mr. Coronado, different generations, Nixa. We are different generations, but we still committed to community. So that is very clear, and that also is a characteristic of Latin American art, that from the muralist movement through the people that support the Indians community, that always been there. But in the last couple of years, every time that we do an art talk, it's artists who bring the subject of the market, because it's an international market, it's an art market. And that concern is there, and recently I think that it can be treated as a conceptual part too. How, because it's a disparity, and when this disparity is present, it means that it's something social wrong, and it needs to be fixed. So it's not about people, middle class people that buy art and doesn't get to the community. The reality is that our art get to the communities, but it doesn't get to the marketplace, where it gives you the opportunity to create more and to give more to the community. So definitely your concern is a clear concern, and it will be good to know about different alternatives. In the Bronx, we are working with the idea of do an art fair, and it's other people that I learned recently that work with art fairs ideas in the United States. So, and definitely market your work is positive and need to be done. Um, what do you think?
I think this is a point that all the artists and and also them have to take into consideration. Like sometimes it's not to sell it for a lot of money, but what actually you make that, or how do the community works in making it reachable to the people in the building next door. For example, like in Puerto Rico, I know like during the 50s, the artists got together and they thought print, small print, doing calendars, things like that, very cheap for $10, $5. That started the situation going, and that's how people got to become collectors. So, you know, how do you teach the people in your community to collect and to start very cheaply with small things? And eventually, you know, it will pick up, you know what I mean? But this is also a social political situation with us and the situation in the island and also in the Caribbean. You know, why is it that we're not reaching out there into the international market? You know what I'm saying? And we don't have, how would I say, how many dealers do we have that are, we have some Latin Americans, but we don't have how many Puerto Ricans. You know, now in Puerto Rico, you hardly have no galleries, you know what I'm saying? So even here in the States, you know, you don't have a Latin American gallery, like Bonino Gallery used to be. I know what, that's an incentive we created Cayman Gallery. So it's always been us in the community that have done Cayman Gallery, Friends of Puerto Rico, Taller Boricua. There was also La Tertulia, you know. Huh? It's a Museum of Contemporary Hispanic Art, came from Cayman, but it was actually Friends of Puerto Rico. So there's a lot of things that have been erased because of money. But these were all initiatives by the same artists, the same people that you see walking around. So I think like now with young people, like they are with the young people, now have to push it to the next level. I mean, that's mainly, you know, what I think. I mean, whatever I can do at my age, I don't know if I last 20 more years, 30, you know.
We wish
Because the clock is
life.
ticking. The clock is ticking, so we don't know. But that's it. But yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But anyway, I was also interested in asking them about their creative process, your intimate creative process on how your day and your week went, and how it worked in your head, in ideas, or do you set up certain times that you say, well, this is my time and I'm going to go work on this? Do you do it like that? I mean, you know, what is the creative process within you that triggers? When is the time? Or do you work things in your head, you know, like, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to use the camera, or then working in that process, and how you work different things in the process to finally finalize. Because I think at the end we have a product, right? You have a product at the end. But actually, as an artist myself, I ask because I enjoy sometimes more the process. Once it's done and it's done, then that's it. But then there's also a leaping, right? Like you're gonna jump into, okay, I did this, now I'm gonna jump into that because that gave me the idea. So I want to know more about your creative process in the photography, you know, and how you work it out, you know, and in terms of how your ideas come about.
Should I go first?
Go ahead.
For this specific series and this process, something that I discovered a couple of years ago at a gallery, and it took me a while to figure out in the darkroom. and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the tones and the process, and I am a very process-oriented person. For this specific series, I didn't always start out this way. It started off very basic, just portraits or just shapes, and then it turned into what it is now. Not every single print was made directly through my camera, but there's a lot of communication, I guess, or collaboration going on between the digital and the darkroom realm with this specific work. These images are founded images from magazines, some of them vintage, some of them fashion, some of them political. But I sat down, I thought about, I already knew exactly how I was gonna actually process it. And these are lumen prints, so these are not done regularly in the darkroom. I use the sun, I use the light from the sun to essentially burn the image onto the light sensitive paper. So that's why they look kind of faded. Once I had an idea of which prints I wanted to do, I did everything in one day because I already have like a system set up for it. But it did take me a couple of weeks to really finalize which images I wanted, what parts I wanted to blur out from the double exposure. And like I said before, I have 2 kids, and I freelance. That's what I do. I freelance for a lot of different people, and that's the only way that I can make enough time for them and myself, and possibly some art. So I pick things up, and I don't have a schedule. You know, I don't have a schedule to make art. It's like, okay, if I can do it today, then I'm gonna devote my entire day. I won't eat. Sometimes I don't sleep, and it's like, nope, this is what I have to do because the kids are not home, and I gotta take advantage of that. You know, so I hope this answers a little bit of the question, but yeah, my work is very process oriented. I like it. I like playing around. I like experimenting. It's like magic for me, personally.
So for me, I always feel like my work does pertain to, like I said, things that have happened to me. And even as a kid, I remember telling my mom, you know, because like she always called me bossy. I was very loud as a kid. I was a hot mess. But I was just like, you know what? If I have something to say, I'm gonna say it. And that's the same way. I'm still like that as a woman. I just do that with my photography. So whatever it is I feel or I'm saying, I try to express it through my lens. With Vejigantes, all my life, those Vejigantes have been in my house, staring at me in the sala, in the living room. And in Carnival, it's always a male. And that bothered me. That really pissed me off. I was like, why isn't it a female? So I just took my father's mask. I snuck it out the house. So when he actually came here to the opening, he was quite surprised to see it on a naked woman. But for me, it's photographing things that bother me or things that perfect example, I was on the internet last night and I had saw 2 girls in Nepal, and this happened probably a few months ago, that were killed in what's called a menstrual hut. You know, they're being exiled from their village simply because they're women, because they're menstruating. Things like that bother me and boil my blood, and so I get really obsessive with it. What I do is I sketch a lot, you know, I draw a lot. I have an idea in my head, and I call this process having sex with my ideas. Like, I just go over it and over it. I get super obsessive. I draw, and then I just shoot and I create. So that's like my crazy process, but I photograph what I know. I don't have a particular thing in mind. I don't have, I'm gonna photograph this. No, it just comes naturally. And I think I like that. I like the organicness of that process.
Lizzy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
This mask, what is that? I don't know the sculpture. What is the mask or the male doing with the mask?
I'm
That
glad.
was my question. It must be something pretty provocative because you picked it.
I'm glad you asked. Okay, so the vejigante is used at a time during Carnival in Puerto Rico, DR, and I think some parts of Colombia. So when I researched it, the Vejigante represents the devil. So in the 12th century, I forgot the name, Saint James, the apostle, was believed to lead the Catholic militia to drive out the Moors or the Muslims out of Spain. And so they celebrated their victory by having, carnival, having those parades, and people would dress up as the Vejigante, which is the devil, and like kind of scaring you to going back to church. And they do that even till today. I know in DR they like, what do you call that? They take like the cow bladder and they fill it up and throw it at you.
They hit you.
Yeah,
Santiago,
yeah. Yes, they will hit you. In PR, I haven't seen that in PR. Yeah. So it was always a male doing that. I think the women just wear like dresses and I think they're called las locas, right? They just dance and they have skirts. But the connection for me with, this devil is because I grew up in such a restrictive environment, and everything I did to my grandmother, like, that's the devil, el diablo, blah, blah. Like, if I wore this at that time, like, she would kill me. Like, that's the devil. So for me, a woman or a beauty and the devil really is the same thing. There's no difference between that. They're both viewed with this fear. So that's why I chose to photograph women with the mask. I hope that answers you.
My process is a bit different. I mean, it's very emotional for me. So emotional situations kind of bring out ideas. So if I'm feeling a particular way, sadness, happiness, most times it's purging out when I'm feeling negative feelings. So that's when I create the most, I think. When I'm happy, I don't find myself creating that much, believe it or not. But my inspiration mostly, if I'm driving in a car and I hear lyrics, if I'm walking down the street and I see a particular color, and those things inspire me to kind of create. And then the actual idea would come from how I'm feeling. So I use all those different things during my day to impact how I will create something. In this particular series, it was my fight with religion. I was raised Catholic, and after I met my husband, there was something that occurred. We wanted to get married. Well, I wanted to get married by church, and my husband had to do his sacraments, right? Because he wasn't brought up that way in church all the time, like myself. So he went and he took his classes for his sacraments, and he did this. And after work, and we were a young couple, and at the end, he sat with the priest, and the priest actually asked him, "So how are you? You're engaged, and so how's your life, your home life?" And he's like, "Well, I live with my fiance and our child." And the priest told him that he couldn't do it, that he couldn't give him his sacraments, that we couldn't get married because we were living in sin. So that made me very angry. And so it made me step away from the church, from organized religion, not being faithful and not believing in something larger than myself, or throw away everything that I grew up with in terms of what my grandmother taught me when I was growing up. But I felt disappointed and I felt let down in the organized religion. And so as everything started happening with Catholics and priests and stuff like that, it was in my head, and I also became obsessive, because I do become obsessive, and then I create the piece and I purge it, and it's gone, and those feelings are gone for me, and they're done. That's it. It's like you said, you create it, and then that's it. You're done. Oh my God, that's how I feel about it. So this whole series has to do with that fight, that internal fight that I went through for many, many years. That happened many years ago. We ended up not getting married via church. We got married at City Hall, and we've been, married. We've been together for 23 years. So, that's a happy ending. But that moment, that crucial moment in my life, was what led me to create all these pieces at different times in my life. So that's my process. It's thinking, it's being upset with something, and trying to create it. I use a lot of props. I I just create stories. You know, that's just my process. In my head, I have this little story going on. I'm an avid reader, so I have a very wild imagination. So there's these crazy things that happen in my head, and I try to bring them out in a photo. These are a little bit less obvious. There's other ones that are more whimsical and more of storytelling than these are. These are more personal and yeah, more personal pieces. So that's kind of like my process. I don't have a certain time. If I can fit it in, I have, you know, if I can fit it in and I feel like I can drag all my stuff out, you know, all the props that I need, then I'll do it. And if I have the energy to do it. But other than that, if I'm very obsessive, then I will run and grab all my stuff and do it. You know, I'll find the time, I'll make it. But most time that doesn't happen. That hasn't happened in a long time, where I'm very obsessed with it, that I have to run upstairs and grab everything and shoot wherever I can. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think the femininity is present in each of them, but their techniques on definitely are different. One very conceptual, focusing the material itself and the process. The other one shoot in something that we can say traditional photo setting, but the subject is a completely analysis between the cultural material itself, that is the mask, and the meaning of it. So it's more anthropological approach. And then Sandra set up what she mentioned, all her props, this setup that she do to create a particular story, but also her attachment with the history of art. She's in some of them she's very interesting in the dark and clear for the classical, like Caravaggio.
Light and dark.
So it's very interesting, the three different processes and how they well match in one show.
Well, I'd like to give you all a thumbs up on all your work, because the three of you have process work, which I know takes a lot of preparation and research, development. You know, this is not just work that's shooting a documentary or anything like that. This is a process work, so it's I think all three of you are very fine photographers, and the work shows it. I love the work that you have on that wall and the process involved with it, because it's you doing a film at the same time. It's like creating a film. You know, the process is a narrative. It's an abstract narrative. It's a surreal narrative, and it takes place as you see it. You made a reality out of it. All three of you have made realities out of your work, and that to say is what makes art successful. You know, so all three of you are very successful photographers. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had two questions, and you already answered your process with respect to your series, particularly Pretty in Pink. But I also want to congratulate the curator and the three of you. Amazing work, very powerful, and you can tell that you love what you do. Just sort of picking up what Pepe said about, you know, the value of your work in the marketplace. I guess that's the next step that you really have to take seriously, and it's only not only to gain. Of course, you need the money. We all do, but it's just to give more value to what you do. You know, this isn't about getting a camera, buying it at Costco, Nikon, and just shooting away. You're, like you said at the beginning, that it's only been more than not even 50 years that women are recognized as serious photographers, as artists, and you have that eye, where I could probably take a picture of Marcos and he's handsome, but it looks good. And today's his birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Happy
so-
birthday.
But then maybe you'll take a picture of Marcos in a different way, because you have that talent. And congratulations. I just wanted to know a little bit about, particularly the two women behind here in the front wall. I mean, as someone said, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and it's how we interpret it. But I'm particularly interested also with the statement with the woman blindfolded. I mean, that's a real powerful piece, as the one in the mantilla.
Well, Bound by Virtue is for me was very straightforward, and it's how I feel. Like, it's how I felt as a child growing up, as a young adult, as a woman, about religion, and about how I grew up. And so we're bound, literally we're bound, we're blind, we're led, and that was my issue. I don't want to be bound. I don't want to be led anywhere. I can make my own way. And so having done this, doing this is so funny. I created it in my studio at home on an early Sunday morning. I said, you know what? I'm going to get up as if I was going to church, and I'm going to create this piece. I want to break away from this, but it's hard. My issue with religion is hard. I want to feel like I hate it. I can do this. I can be, but I'm not, because I grew up with this idea that I have to be, this and I have to be that when it comes to religion. And so that's why I created it, because that's how I feel most of the time, although I don't want to and I don't really act that way, but I feel like we all are, not only myself, but just in general. Not only women, but all of us, that grow up with religion. The other one was, it's her final goodbye, and it's the woman holding her husband's skull, and it was shot in a small church on a cemetery in Brooklyn.
I just have one other question, and again, it's about like technique, but where you the three of you, I think that you speak about being in the dark room and then working with digital. I thought that much to the displeasure and pain of very established photographers, where it's like the darkroom doesn't exist anymore. It's like if you have a negative from the 50s, it's very hard to get it reproduced, or it just like, where do you go? So I was just trying to think of the digital, with the Photoshop, but this darkroom. What is the darkroom?
The dark room is where the magic happens. I struggled for a while with digital. You remember this because I was against it. I didn't want to know about it. But unfortunately, I think as artists, you just come to that point where, you have to know it. You should learn it. It's a good skill. So, but for me, the dark room, I think that moment when I put my film into the holder and it projects onto my paper, and then I put it through the chemical and it comes up. For me, that it's just magic. I think what we were touching on is like the material, what do you call it? Materiality of it all, or this tangibility of it. Digital, you don't really have that. And it's sad to say, sometimes I'll look at my work and I'll have it on my website, people see it, but sometimes I don't physically have it. It's not tangible, it's not in my hand. And I think that's what drives me to the darkroom. Sometimes, I haven't done it in a while, but what I'll do is, I guess to kind of make a hybrid of the two, is I'll shoot and film, I'll develop it myself at home, scan it into Photoshop, and then I'll make a print like that. I mean, that's the best way because I love the dark room, and I don't care what anybody says, it will never be obsolete.
Yeah.
Like dark room till I die.
I've never had any experience in a dark room. My work is all digital. You know, if I want to touch it, I get it printed, and I have it. But yeah, no, I've never had any experience. So for me to hear her and hear them talk about it, I wish I had the experience too. I wish I had that opportunity. So I probably will maybe go to a dark room and see what all the magic is. You know?
I mean, just to add to what Lizzie said, we met at Lehman, and we literally spent like as much time as we could in the dark room until like campus police would have to come knocking. You guys need to go. Campus is closed, and we'd be there like rushing to dry our prints and flatten them because you're making these prints. You gotta wash them, and then they get crinkly, and you gotta flatten them. And there's a lot of care involved also with making the print, but. The darkroom is also this beautiful space. You know, the lighting is ambient, and there's the smells.
I love the smell of
You
Fixer.
know, you're splashing around. You can put on your music. Nobody bothers you. You can't turn on bright lights. Like right now, this would not be good for the darkroom. You know, so you feel kind of like you're in. It almost feels like you're working within your mind as well. Like you're in this private space. At least that's the way that I see it.
I have a quick question about the strategy that you have of presentation. The three of you are very different in that sense. Why did you arrive at this form of presentation?
For me, my work is very heavily textured. So I always like to print it in some type of canvas, whether it's flat canvas or wrapped canvas. I always try to use that kind of medium so that the texture that I do use in post-processing comes out.
For my Gigantes, I knew immediately I was going to have them in black frames because of the theme. It's dark, it's hellish, it has to do, it has a religious kind of undertone if you know the history of the Gigantes. I just wanted it dark. I wanted it to have that feeling to it because that's what it's about. It's duality between good and evil.
For my Pretty in Pink series, I chose to use all white borders and frames because the prints themselves are very, very light, and I didn't want anything dark or to take away from the print itself. Also, if you notice, there's no glass. So it's kind of this play on like how close do you want to get to this print, and it's very delicate, and it's kind of like this play on trust issues with women and like how close you get and boundaries and things like that. It's been an ongoing issue, I think. So I kind of wanted the audience to feel like they could really get as close as they could, but still know that they cannot be touched. They're delicate, and yeah.
Yeah, from the curatorial point of view, at the beginning I thought about I will mix them, but when the work was here, then I realized that she was a very important element of transition. So in some way, you have Lizzy there with a strong contrast and almost monochromatic. And then you have Sandra with a chromatic discourse that is very consistent. And then she has some monochromatic pieces that take you to Maria that is completely soft but in a very consistent manner that takes you from here all the way to down there. So there is a strong challenge when you hang the exhibition itself with these three different artists.
Can I just make a quick follow-up on Marcos' mention of these series being cinematic and narrative, I wondered if these images are part of a single story or multiple stories, because I see the same figure of the young boy appearing. I wonder if that's one story?
The three, right. The three are, that one is a smaller, I started to be serious about this series when I created the first one, Tell Me Your Worst, in 2015 rather. And I always knew that those three were gonna be, that series was gonna, that at first that it was gonna be a series and that there was gonna be three. So yeah, those three are together. They are a story, but they do fit into the realm of the others. However, they are their own narrative and they are their own little story. Tell Me Your Worst. It's when I grew up when I was growing up and I was going to church on Sundays, I always thought that we would go to church and then we would come out and everyone would be outside. And as soon as you step out of church, people start talking about each other, right? So I always thought as a kid, why is she talking about, so as when I got a little bit older and I started noticing, why are they talking about each other when they just got out of church? It's so sacred, you're not supposed to be talking about each other and stuff like that, and bochinchando, right? So that first piece was about, you really don't know who you're standing beside. The little boy has the knives and the woman has the dead flowers, and, stuff is coming out of her mouth, and, you really don't know who you're standing beside. In this situation, the actual boy is not the good person. So it's this good and evil kind of connotation in these three pieces. And yeah, they do go together. They all tell their different stories. And again, like I said, is like the story that's in my head, that story that's going round and round, and it's in three photos. So yeah, I could sit here and talk the whole day about what the craziness that's inside those photos, but I like to hear what people think about what they are. Oh, this little boy, why does he have the two knives? And stuff like that. That's what I like to hear. What do you think is happening? I definitely know what's happening from my perspective.
Would you ever do something with film and time?
I don't know. I think that I have my hands full with photography, and I think that I like to invest all the free time that I have in that one passion. I don't know. I don't think I see myself doing anything else in the realm of film. No. Somebody could take it and make it into a film. That'll be good. I have stories for days. Yeah.
Thank you. First off, thank you for speaking. Today's been very enlightful, getting to hear you guys' process of how you came to do the work. Just wanted to touch on something you guys talked about earlier about the youth. I guess if you had a chance, what's something you wish you could speak to the youth about? It's funny that the times that we live in now is probably, since I've been living, is the most creative times we live in. But it's funny that we still have the things that are still, how do you say, putting people down. So it's limiting people. So what's something you would want to get across to the youth if you had a chance to?
In my situation, I like to do workshops any chance that I get. I've done workshops in the past with other places that I've shown in. Particularly in the Bronx, I had a show at the Poe Visitor Center, and so we did a workshop with small children where they came in and they got to create their own stories. So I actually created stories for them with all their props that they picked themselves. And so I think that for me it's important to do, I love to do the teaching part in terms of storytelling and creativeness, and because like I said before, I want to be that person that has told them when they were 10 and 12 that they could do it, so that when they're older and they can or they want to, they can do it. Oh, I saw this woman one time, that told me that I could do it, and she did this, and I want to do it too. And so I think that that's the way that that I'm doing it with our organization, the Bronx Women's Photo Collective. We're doing it as a group. empowering other women photographers who are not as prevalent. They don't come out of the woodworks. When we announced that, all these women photographers came out that we didn't even know were out there. So that's how we not only do it for the youth, but also for other women.
Just to touch on what Sandra said, I think if I could, and I mean, we're kind of at that point where I think mentoring is a big thing. I wish I would have had somebody when I was younger to mentor me or tell me I could create or I could do this or tell me there's an outlet for me. And I think that's super, it's important, it's crucial to have, especially to groups that have been limited or marginalized or they don't have access to it. I would like, I mean, hopefully one day we get there, to have a space open, because I think, again, it's that, art being accessible to everybody. So I think having a space like that for young girls, and I mean, I'm a teacher, so I would love to have workshops, classes, having a mentorship.
For the youth, I think that they should just keep creating and getting as loud and as crazy as they want. I think the more art they make, the more they express themselves, whether it's through social media or graffiti or doing these one-night pop-up exhibitions, because they do happen. There is a lot of little things going on. You just don't hear that much about it. But I'm a big encourager of creativity. Like wherever I go within my own family, within my own community. I've done teaching for various organizations, and as rewarding as that was, it was also very hard for me to be an educator consistently, because there's just not enough funding for education, especially in areas like the South Bronx. It's sad. It's really sad. When you're given an opportunity to teach these children, but then you've got 20 kids to teach, but there's only 3 cameras that are working. How do you do that? But I think what I would like to do or work towards more is just organizing, collaborating with other organizations, bringing in money into those spaces, having that accessible to the community, just spreading the news, spreading resources to as many as possible, and just like make noise, get in trouble, do something, but like have a message. Don't just make noise for the hell of it,
Thank you. Hey, so I apologize if I repeat anything because I did get here a little bit late. So if you talked about something, I'm very sorry. But I've been thinking about a few things, namely the forced tearing that happens as a result of leaving the church, which I think from a women's point of view is like, it's forgetting, in a sense, abuelita knowledge, or a new tearing from the womb, a rebirth to the self. And there's an essential pain that goes into that. And I see that in all of these, like this partitioning of selves and memory, which goes into the idea of the veil, or, this split person never quite being able to be completely in the place that you were, not knowing quite where you're going. So my question, I guess, is if you have anything to go off of that about the multiplicity of memory and the ways in which we can come into a place of nurture for ourselves through creating this space of magic through the material, and through curating a new magic.
Well, I think you just said it. It's actually doing it. What's on these walls is actually what I've lived through, and how I've coped and continue to cope with, deconditioning myself, which is not really a deconditioning. It's just, getting to a point where I'm happy with everything. I'm happy with that being what it is, and I'm happy with myself being the way that I am, and what I teach my children, and how I live my life. What I think has brought me to the point where I am now is just that I'm happy, that I make it a point to be happy, regardless. I don't perseverate on any negativity. I try to be happy all the time, although I do have dark times where that's when I use my work the most to kind of get rid of that and then keep it moving. I don't think that this is ever going to go away from me. I think that there's always going to be that religious connotation that I'm still trying to handle and still trying to live with. I just don't make it the point and the focus of my life. But it is there. It's always probably going to be there. I can't decondition myself really from what my grandmother brought me up as, you know. So it's just that's going to be my internal thing for the rest of my life. But to be happy is, and to find a happy medium with your art, that is, I think, what is crucial. You know, aside from sharing it and doing it just personally, yeah, I think that's what has been important for me, you know. Lizzy has the same kind of thing going on as well. I don't know how you deal, if it's the same as myself or...
Well, me and you, I think, have kind of the same religious undertone in that sense. I mean, it's different, but I feel like it's kind of similar, and I relate to your work in that sense, because, I mean, it's because of my grandmother, basically, and her being strict, that, you know, it caused me to rebel and create these things. You know, I never followed it. I was never one to be like, okay, I'm gonna cover up. No, I was always like, why, Grandma? ¿Por qué? Why? And, you know, that's just the driving force behind my work. And it's just, I'm gonna keep creating. I have something to say. There are things that bother me, and I'm gonna express it through my work. You know, I'm going to be in your face about it, basically.
To touch upon what you said, you know, with the duality of things or multiplicity. Yeah, sorry. You know, being Latina, whatever the word is now, you have to be really careful with labels nowadays. But I mean, you know that the Caribbean is a spectrum. We are a spectrum. We are a mix of so many different types of races and religions and colors and blah, blah, blah. Like, our rainbow is all over the place. So I definitely thank my history, because without it, we wouldn't be here in some kind of way. But there's also that questioning of like, okay, where's the balance? You know, the yin and yang, even within ourselves. And if I, to talk a little bit more about what I'm trying to do here, I don't just have images of women, I also do it with men. You know, I don't like to discriminate. With all of my work, I include men as well. I also have a son, and I encourage him to express himself. So even though, yes, this is a very delicate time for women, it's a delicate time for any human being to be expressive and creative, to show any kind of softness or femininity, you know. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but you know, I don't like to be exclusive of that. I'm also like, maybe you weren't here when I said it, but I'm a little all over the place. Like, I have a lack of focus. But I think every human being has both sides to them, and I think that's something that, you know, society nowadays, like, there's a lot of discussion with that, a lot of discussion with what is it to be masculine, what is it to be feminine, what does it mean to be a woman, what does it mean to be a mother, a father, and these are things that we're all going to keep having conversations about and making art about, I guess, because it hasn't stopped. It's just going on and on and on. And I think that's the best way to kind of like show it to other people who are a little bit more closed-minded. I hope that.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I don't know if you already spoke about the title of the exhibit, but I would like to know what it means. If the nation aspect relates to anything in particular, or I'm wondering, just the name.
I did fight with. I did. You see, it's not about imposing. You know, when you do a curatorial, it's about sharing and learning together. When they come out with this Femme Nation, I go and I say Femme Nation. And but are you sure that you want? And for weeks I keep, I keep saying, are you sure that you want to keep Femme Nation? And it go exactly related to your comment because identity, and like I say at the beginning, in women's photography, identity always is present, and people wrote analysis about that. So, so the layers and identity is on definitely there in terms of memory and history. But yes, let them know about the foundation.
Wait, can I just, I'm sorry, because I'm laughing about it. So, yes, we came up with the title together, the three of us, and I was in Lewis's office one day. I think I was dropping off my work, and Lewis was just like, hey, why don't we call it Femme Fatale? And I was like, absolutely not. No. And the reason why, I mean, I didn't, sorry. The reason why I immediately objected to it is, you know, I felt we are three females, we're three Latinas, and our work, you know, gravitates around the themes of femininity. So like sexuality, motherhood, and even like themes of religion. What does that mean to be a woman? So I felt Femme Nation was more fitting to it. And also, you know, I mean, I know we say it all the time, but really the future is female. Especially, right, like it really is. Like it's more prevalent. It's, you know, so sorry I objected to it, but I am so happy we stuck with Femme Nation.
I think that we wanted a strong title. We needed something that would cover our styles without giving it a label, so to speak. So obviously femme goes without saying, but what we're trying to build, we are trying to build a nation, a feminine nation in art. And so we wanted to, you know, just bring that about without really labeling the individual work. So it's the title that, the strongest title that we could come up with that covered everything. And it also sounds great, Nación Femenina in Spanish. So that's why, another reason why we decided to stick with it. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if my second question is, how do you relate to the Caribbean, to Puerto Rico, to, I don't know if you're Puerto Rican, sorry, I'm new here. So that's why I wanted to know if you want to relate to the Caribbean, wherever you come from.
Well, my series, Vejigantes, the Vejigante itself, that's like in the Caribbean. That's the mask that's used during Carnival. So that's like one way in which I relate to my culture, to the mask.
I was born here in New York City, but my parents are Dominican. I also have a lot of family in Puerto Rico. And it's interesting growing up here in New York and then going back and forth and how you're viewed differently. Oh, you know, you don't speak Spanish right, or you're too pale to be Dominican, or blah, 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 you know. So I guess with femination and art, it's more of like how women are perceived based on their ethnicities and their, you know, their backgrounds and what sells, you know, in the media, what's considered beautiful or what's considered powerful. I still have a connection to all of that. I'm still always going to be connected to my roots in some kind of way. And I think that just this part of the world, America itself, there's a lot of collaboration between, you know, between North America and South America. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of communication. So I feel like it's always going to be there. There are a lot of Spanish speakers here in this country now, so, you know.
My parents are from Puerto Rico, and I was born and raised in the South Bronx. But I kept, as I was growing up, I would spend much time in Puerto Rico. for the summers and the holidays. I would be there. So I did grow up with both cultures, so to speak, because being here is so very different. But in my work, in this series, a lot of what I grew up with in a Puerto Rican household, you know, carries over. And also in the work that I do outdoors, all my work is like in the woods, you know, in greenery, because it wasn't something that I was exposed to here in the concrete jungle, but I was to over there. So yeah, it has a lot of impact on what I create a lot of the times. Subconsciously, I don't do it purposely, I don't think, but it's just what I was brought up with. So yeah, it definitely carries over in my work a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to just share something about the title, and I was mentioning it to another artist who's here, that it's actually a little bit controversial, but maybe you don't even realize it. This is June is Pride Month for the LGBT community, so when all of the emails and Facebook postings went out, it was like, oh, this is a group of femme lesbians. I don't know if you know about the subculture, femme and butch, and although it's not used,
we chose it anyway.
Yeah, okay. So you know, I said no. I think they're straight, but you should come and see the show and listen, or see if you can today, but just come and see the show. You know.
We've been called worse, actually. So we actually looked that up, and because we did do the tag, we looked up the tag, and you know what? We didn't see any problems with it. We were like, "There's worse than you can call us. By all means, we're gonna use that title anyway." You know, the femme part, which is what's associated. So we did run the tags and everything, and we were like, "We're still going with it."
It kind of ties a lot of things together, and something that you said that I'm interested to hear. You know, when you talk about, so this is you know, curatorially you have three people's work here, but then there is the area of a collective, which you mentioned. You guys have one too, and then the value of you know, that collective voice. So my question is, in that process, there is, not everybody can do it. A lot of artists might be in a group show, but they're not in a collective environment, right? So when you break that and you enter in that collective space, there are give and takes, creatively and conceptually, and so, and some of those are a little uncomfortable sometimes, but some of those moments are you learn a lot, because you're working next to a person that sings differently than you, even if it's the same medium. So you enrich yourself that way. So my question is around that area. How do you guys feel individually about that collective space? And I think a lot of artists have a fear that if they enter that collective space, they give up some of their individuality, which I think is not true. But I'm curious about, and what you feel about that, Luis, when you. Because it sounds like this is more than just a group show. You guys sounds like there is something going on, you know, in terms of the concepts.
The collective, well, in terms of experience, you are right in one way, because I did work with Sandra and Lizzy in the show of their groups. They have a group. They founded a group in the Bronx. That is the
Bronx Women's Photo Collective.
Yeah, that is very interesting as well. That we talk about the Taller concept and Bronx space concept, and the idea of this guerrilla way of looking art, right? But then this show brought that connection already as a way for them to be a militant of photography and women. And then they brought Maria. They brought Maria that bring a very interesting contrast. I don't think that they have an issue of collectivity and their individuality is safe because it's solid.
Yes.
So
For the Bronx Women's Photo Collective, it's myself, Lizzy, and our other partner is Raina Santos, and she's a photojournalist. So we are totally different in the sense that our art is they're very, our styles are very, very different. But because we are so much individual, we make it work. Like we don't have, and we don't compromise. My art is my art, my way is my way, and hers is hers, and Raina's is Raina's. When Louis did do, we did do a show called Living Latina, with Louis that he curated, and it was our 3 different styles in one show. We're also currently working on another project that's a group project. So we make it work. We have to have respect for each other and for our art. And so I think that first and foremost, when we went into it with that idea that I have this, you have that, she has that, and we all make it work. And we're smart women. We come in, we get into a meeting, and we come up with the craziest thing, and we make it work. We haven't had any issues, and we've been almost 2 years, almost a year and a half, maybe.
To answer your question, I was kind of what you said already. I don't feel like individually as an artist, my style is compromised. We're very different. Like Raina's documentary. Like I would not do that. That's not my style. But I respect her style and I appreciate it. I'm not a documentary photographer, but I think coming with these 2 artists, with Sandra and with Raina, I feel it kind of gives me this drive. Then the reason why we created this collective is because we just felt there wasn't a platform for women of color in the Bronx to come together and create art or talk about art even. So we created it, and collectively, I think, we're awesome. I'm proud of us.
We're doing good, and it helped in this show as well. I think what Louis says was correct. It helped us come together with Maria and kind of bring her into this kind of way that we deal with, working together as a group. There really was no issues other than Louis trying to figure out how to make them mesh and flow together, which he's great at, so he was going to do that. But I think that because we've run our collective the way that we do, that it was easier to kind of bring her in and kind of be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to support each other, and we're going to put out, a great show. And I think that's what ended up happening in the end.
That's also our mission. Our mission is to get women, particularly women that haven't really been seen. We met so many women photographers from Harlem to the Bronx to Brooklyn that came out of the woodworks, and that's my goal, is to kind of create this platform and push women out there. I would love it if we could curate something.
Yeah. And to be together and not be fighting amongst themselves so much. Just kind of be together,
And push each other, empower each other.
Just to piggyback on that too, I think that's so important in that you have Seis del Sur, which is but that's all men, right?
Yes.
Doing great work,
Yes.
right? But there aren't any women photojournalists in that particular collective. So I think what you all are doing is a sense of intervention about who gets to document what, right? So that's so crucial. So just kudos, congratulations.
Thank you.
Foco.
We were in Foco. We were out there to cover up their relaunch.
Foco is alive. It's alive. Now Bill Aguado.
Yeah,
So it's very well alive.
I know, right?
Thank you guys for coming on such a rainy day.